has done class as much. Like if she lives in the Midwest or something, she has to class in other places.
Yeah.
So
That would be cool. She's good people.
GS, is this slideshow available anywhere?
I just emailed it to you.
Beautiful.
If, I mean, you registered, as long as you're on the list of RSOPs, I just emailed it to
There
you.
it is. So I was going to pull it out and take notes on it, so I didn't have to.
Did not get it. I think I registered.
What's your last name again?
P-H-E.
Yep, you are on here. So you should get it in a minute. If you don't, let me know and I'll forward it to you.
Okay.
I'll actually go ahead and forward it to you just in case. But I mean, you could, like a lot of our students have been marked as junk.
Yep. Why? Why are you like just trying?
I'm going to say it probably isn't.
But it's from Executive Contractors 2019 at Gmail.
Yeah, I'm going to say that's definitely not right.
Well, I think I should probably delete that and not open the attachments.
That has nothing to do with us. You can have every knowledge you want it.
Programming and parking regulations. That's what she said. She's not excited about the parking regulations.
I'm not surprised. Who's that? Mark,
That's, yeah.
Yeah. So then she said her big project, that's something that we do. But she also does a lot with outreach.
She's been around a few times too. She's been on last council, this council, previous year. It's part of our housing procedure behind a piece of matzah. So we hid it inside her bulletproof vest.
Wow.
And it was hysterical. She is such a great sport. I went up to her, I was like, she did what she wanted. I said, okay.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was very sweet.
Do you do proposals that they have to find her if they don't keep going?
No,
That's what my family does.
no, in fact, a lot of students leave once we get past that point.
That's their
The second half.
Yeah.
Yeah. So last year, a lot of people stayed, kids and to the last part of the state.
It was really interesting. It was really interesting to see, the whole event. I've never done it
This
anywhere.
is an experience and a half.
Yeah. It's gonna be a little bit
The
hard.
downstairs is wall to wall, literally wall to wall.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's okay. We never do that.
You can do it to Emma and, I mean, it's,
So if you use the same one, I would leave it.
we don't know.
For one of the yellow, red ones that we got in the passive or something?
We don't use that.
Those are the same ones that we use. So I have
We used it
cards
for
that are.
years, and in the past few years, we used one of those people fell in my house. Yeah.
Because I have cards that have like specific reading sections on them. From that, we got it, if we wanted to, we could hand those out. People come in kind of like a reading cards for the.
For sure. Let
Yeah,
Anna
I'm on
know
it.
that's in Japan. For sure. It's fun. We learn so many different things, but the second night we did it after shopping center.
Yeah. Friends, maybe?
Yes, for the second center.
Yeah, there was one came on during,
Well, Saturday, basically, the shopping center, and residents. What hall was it?
Happiness?
Oh, yeah. I was thinking Hamilton, which is where we're at. I think there's an H on that right there.
Yeah. I always get
Hannah versus, we could do it in the Westerns because there's so many first years there. That'd be really fun.
do we have, should we do it a certain way or would we do it?
Could do it before. It'll be a lot easier. Yeah.
I just want to
Great
say something.
classes.
Well, the other week, I had some breakfast for dinner the day
Great
before.
project to put it together.
We can't figure out who we want to do the dinner. The sheet.
Sue, how are you? Good. Now, okay.
What to do together this semester? Remember that show? And now that Shalom Habibi show to a guy from Helen contacted me. And yeah,
Yeah.
James, can you put
Yes.
yeah, they were doing that. Is it how about we want to do
Yes,
together?
yes, yes, yes.
So it's.
raise your use moving that other way? Just moving that way. Thank you.
I've been learning also.
He's a freshman, he was learning.
All right, thank you all for being here, and thank you to those of you who are joining us electronically. via our live stream. This will be available afterwards to be reviewed. My plan is also to break it out into sections. We've got a lot of material to cover, so there might be some things that I don't go into super detail about, but I do plan to break it out into sections that are a little more easily consumable, so you don't have to watch the whole video to get to that information. I'll dig deeper into each of the items. If you do have questions, I ask that you hold those, write them down, make a note, please. Hold those until the end, in case I do get to it during the presentation. If you have more questions, once we're done, I'm happy to address those, happy to dig deeper and answer those. So a few things I'd like to cover today are contracts, finance, and funding for student organizations. You as advisors, we appreciate so much the work that you do with our students. I know that things are sometimes changing in the university. Things can be a little bit complicated with about 500 registered student organizations, affiliated organizations, and fraternities and sororities that our office supports. It is impossible for us to monitor every single thing that each one of them is doing. So we really appreciate the relationships that we have with you as advisors, the support that you're able to give them on a more direct and on a more regular basis. So I do want to thank you. I do know that some of this stuff is complicated and maybe boring. I'll apologize for that, but it is a matter of the subject matter. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started on the first and possibly the most, or the area that has maybe the most confusion is contracts. I do want to mention that things frequently change with how contracts are handled with the university. This is because of reassessing interpretations legally of how the state institutions need to process contracts, need to review contracts, and what we're able to do. And as a public institution, we get all the state guidelines. So we get various state memos that come down the line to our legal office on things can be reinterpreted different ways. And so it is a constant work in progress. We've been steady now with our current contracting policies for a little over a year. So I think things are fairly steady at this point. And any new updates, we will certainly let you know. So let's first get into all general contract information. What we need for all our student organizations. This is affiliated student organizations, registered student organizations, general student organizations that make up the majority of that 500 number. And for our fraternities and sororities, anything that's going to have service performed on our campus should have a contract in place. So if anybody is coming to campus, whether that's a consultant, an entertainer, an equipment rental, where they have to come set the equipment up on campus, where they need to tear down that afterwards or operate the equipment. Any vendor, speaker, lecturer, anything of that type, we should have a contract in place with them. What this does is it protects the student organization, it protects the university, and it protects that vendor so that they don't come and try to perform a service that hasn't been approved and then come into some struggle in trying to get funding because it didn't go through the proper processes, it wasn't previously approved, and there's a struggle to pay it. Once again, we're under state guidelines and are required to follow all of those as a public institution, and so we do need to make sure those are followed. If there's something that prohibits us from paying a specific vendor via the state, then we do have to follow that. So getting the contract in place, getting it reviewed, making sure that everything is good to go on the front end before the event happens is really going to save everybody a lot of headaches. The contract process should be started at least 1 month in advance of the event, preferably further. We understand things happen. If something comes up and you need something in a quicker manner, we'll do our best. But we ask that you give us at least a month if you can. And if you need something expedited specifically, we are happy to try to do our best to do whatever we can. First thing I want to address is, I've mentioned a couple of times the different types of organizations. General registered student organizations, once again, those make up the bulk
of our student organizations on campus. Departmentally affiliated organizations, social fraternity and sororities, and I added a little, how do I know? We're going to go into that in just a second. There's another category also that is club sports. They follow some slightly different procedures, but so we're not going to really dig into that right now. If any advisors are advisors of club sports, would like to ask more questions, would like to get into that, I'm happy to address those as needed. But these are going to take care of the bulk of our questions. So how do I know? First thing that I'd say is, do you have Greek letters or not? Does the organization have Greek letters or not? If there are Greek letters, is the organization a part of the Panhellenic Association, the Interfraternity Council, or IFC, or NPHC, the National Panhellenic Council? If the answer is no, or you're not sure, it is really highly unlikely that the organization is classified as a fraternity or sorority. You would likely know that you'd be in contact fairly regularly with one of those three councils, and you would be getting communication very frequently about our social fraternities and sororities. If you have Greek letters, but you're an honorary, or you're a leadership fraternity, or special interest fraternity, something along those lines, there are organizations that are on our campus that are fraternities that fit under those categories. For our purposes, they are considered a general registered student organization. They are, one thing that sort of separates them is the single gender aspect to the fraternities and sororities. They are governed by some outside entities and their national organizations that oversee them. And so for those reasons, they have some different policies that apply to them. One thing that for our fraternity and sorority advisors out there, you know that you can't receive funding from our student government. It's considered state funding, and it can't go to an organization that is a single gender organization. So there are some different things that apply in that case, and that's why we separate those out. So for as far as I know, all of our honorary leadership, special interest fraternities are all gender, and for that reason they fit into our registered student organization format. Unless they're departmentally affiliated. So there are some Greek letter organizations that are departmentally affiliated. There's one in particular, I think it'll come up on one of these next pages, that is directly affiliated. It's a math honorary society that has Greek letters, that is directly tied with the math department, and is considered an affiliated organization. So anytime that you have a departmentally affiliated organization, that's going to supersede or take precedence over these other classifications. Is my organization affiliated? That's a natural next question. It's determined by the department that oversees that, or directly supervises, directs the organization, considers it to be sort of an extension of their office. There is a list of them available on our website. Our website is miamioh.edu/student activities, and there's a link right here. We are going to send this out, also the PowerPoint slide as well. And just in case you're curious, I do have a list of them right here. So these are all our affiliated student organizations on our campus. If your organization is on there, then you're an affiliated organization and should follow the guidelines set forth for affiliated organizations. If you think you should be affiliated, please get in touch with our office and we can work with you to make sure that happens. The one that I mentioned, it just stuck out to me. It was, it is Greek letters, but it's a math honorary, and it is tied, it's a direct extension of the mathematics department. Any organization that does not meet those prior criteria, they're not on that list. They are not a Greek letter organization that is considered a social fraternity or sorority, is going to fall under the classification of an RSO, or registered student organization. You'll likely hear me refer to it as RSO, which just means registered student organization. It applies to the vast majority of our student organizations. One thing to keep in mind when we're thinking about contracts, so now that we've sort of laid the groundwork on the types of organizations, there are going to be some deviations moving forward from here on out, but these apply to all contracts, whether it's a affiliated, registered student organization, or fraternity and sorority. These are important things to keep in mind. Determine whether the contractor is a company or an independent contractor. For companies, they're going to be doing business as a corporation. They're going to have a employer identification number that they're going to use on their W-9. I'm going to show you what a W-9 looks like if you're unfamiliar in just a few slides, but it is that EIN is going to be filled out on their W-9. They're operating as a business. They are incorporated through whichever state they do business in. They are incorporated through the IRS, and if they are doing business as an incorporated company, then there are some specific ways that we handle contracts with them. If you are doing a contract with one of them, it is preferred to use a contract from that company. If they don't have one, we have a template that we're able to use, and once you have a contract, we're happy to review it. In fact, for registered student organizations, we need to review all of them, and I'll get into that in just a moment. For independent contractors, this is anyone that's doing business as themselves, so likely it's going to be a person's name. This applies to sole proprietors, single member LLCs, individuals, in most cases, anyone that's doing business where they fill out their social security number on their W-9. They are doing business as an independent entity and not as an incorporated business, and not as an incorporated company. For these, there is a slightly different process than contracts. They're going to need an OPERS form. It's required by the state. I'm going to show you what it looks like. An OPERS form basically says, it asserts that the individual, whether or not they're receiving retirement benefits from the state of Ohio, it's something that the state of Ohio needs to check on. So we have to have that form filled out so that we can send it up to the state office for them to review and file away. We would also need a professional services agreement, which we do on a standard Miami form that is a little bit different from what we would do for a general, or for a company. Please note, there are exceptions to all of these. Those are really good guidelines. Most companies or independent contractors fit into those categories, whether they use their social security number or their EIN on their W-9. It fits for most of the time, but I just want to caution that every once in a while we do come up with something that's an exception to the rule, and we're aware of that. We want you to be aware that there are some slight variations. So here's what the W-9 looks like. You've probably seen it before, but I know it might be a little bit unclear out there, but social security number goes here, or the EIN goes here. They would fill out one or the other. Sometimes I've gotten companies that have filled both out because they are a small business, they're only a handful of employees, they don't have an EIN, they have a social security number. In situations where they fill them both out, it's highly likely that since they have an employer identification number, they're going to be considered a company, but we do need to check it against the state database. Again, what's your type of organization? So right now we're going to dive into how to contract for RSOS, Registered General Student Organizations. All contracts have to be reviewed by the Cliff Alexander Office of Fraternity and Sorority Life and Student Activities. To shorten that for our purposes, I'll probably just be calling it Student Activities. First, we need to determine if the vendor is a company or an independent contractor. We just went over that. We did that. Next, what they're going to do is they're going to use this form on byway. So this should be done by the student treasurer. They can go into this form to get the instructions and to pull all the necessary documents that they're going to need from the independent contractor. So again, right now we're diving into what it looks like for a student organization to contract with somebody who's doing business as themselves. They're going to use the student organization independent contractor form, and before completing this form, the vendor must be added to the byway system. They can always go into the form to see these instructions again. It does tell them that. There's a page of text that notifies them of all the steps that they're going to need to follow. They should ask for a W-9 and communicate to the independent contractor that it's not a guarantee of agreement. So that's an important step, that they should not be guaranteeing that this is going to go forward as a contract, but this is a necessary step in order to be considered for it. So we would need a W-9, they need to be added to the system. Not all requests will be approved. It doesn't happen very often, but we do need to review them all. We might need to make changes to a contract or an agreement, so we do need to review them. This form serves as a review of the proposed independent contractor and the contract all in one. This is what it looks like. I mentioned that they can go on here, so it does have steps, all the steps that they're going to need. They can get the blank professional services agreement, which is needed for all independent contractors. They can get the blank OPERS form, which I mentioned previously. They can get one other document that I'm going to get into in just a few slides. But those are important forms. They're needed for all independent contractors. They'll have to download those and then complete the sections that they can complete, send them to the contractor. The contractor will review it, fill in what they can, and sign it to confirm that they have agreed to all of it. We should review it before the students sign the contracts, but the vendor should be signing the contract first. This is what an OPERS form looks like. Again, it's more of a procedural step, but it is required by the state. So this information is pre-filled in with Miami's, the individual in purchasing office that handles the relationship with the state. So that information should remain in there. This should be completed by the vendor. These should be completed by the vendor too. It's the service that's provided and the dates of service. Then one thing that people frequently miss is that there's a signature page on the second page, so they do need to sign that signature line. This is just a quick snapshot. It's 4 pages long. This is what our professional services agreement looks like. It's a stock standard form that the students should fill out everything that they can. So they should, when they're engaging with a independent contractor, they should be talking to them about what's the payment going to look like? How much are you going to charge for these services that I'm asking? So they should know that information. That goes down here in the payment information. They should know who the individual is. They can fill that up in the upper section and what the services are being provided. So you can read through those. You all are welcome to read through those. I would encourage it, particularly if you think your organization is going to be contracting with an independent contractor. It has some standard language in it that is required for us as a public institution. Please note, I just got this note earlier this week, that the form that I mentioned on my way, when students are submitting it, it's disappearing. So we're working with IT to find out where those are going and get that resolved. I expect it to be resolved very soon. In the meantime, the students can still go to that form to download the blank documents. But then what they should do is send them to studentactivities@miamioh.edu for us to manually process them. I know that's an inconvenience, I'm sorry for it. We're trying to figure out what happened. For registered student organizations that are going to contract with a company, it's actually a good amount easier. We ask that they should preferably be using a contract that's supplied by the company. We'll review the contract, let them know if there's any changes that need to be made to the contract, and then we can send it back to be approved by that contracting company. Before signing it, the contract does need to be reviewed by our office to make sure that the students are protected and the university is protected, that there's no guarantee of something that they can't promise, that the students can't promise. So if one thing that's a good example, the university, public institutions in Ohio are typically not allowed to prepay for services. So if somebody's going to come in and, let's call it a comedian, use that as an example. Somebody's going to be a comedian, they're going to present to a group and perform for them, but they want payment up front before they perform. It's not something that we're allowed to do. It's not something that we've had problems with before. As a large institution, as a state institution, once we have the contract in place, that's a guarantee of payment once it's been approved. So that's in 99% of cases sufficient for all vendors that I've worked with, and I've worked with quite a few. So they do understand that the university is under some certain restrictions, and that being one of them. Some other things that we can't do as an institution would be to indemnify somebody that's coming to perform. Again, that protects the students and it protects the campus. So if we were to indemnify somebody from anything that they're doing on the campus, it effectively makes it so they're not responsible for their actions. So again, we'll review that. JS and I are the point people on who will be reviewing those contracts. We review them with the students. They can send an email to studentactivities@miamioh.edu. That's going to be a trend that I keep mentioning, that one. We can review it in most cases remotely. We'll make some little edits on it, send it back to the students and say, this is what we need to have changed. Reach back out to the company. If they're uncomfortable reaching back out to the company because they see a bunch of changes on it, I'm always happy to contact the company. I work with them all the time, and am happy to go ahead and do that for them. You also all are welcome to do that as well on the students' behalf, but if you need any advice from me, need any help with that, it's something that I do regularly. If for some reason we need to dig in deeper, need to set up a meeting, maybe there's some dramatic changes that we need to make to a contract, we may require a meeting, but always best if we can take a look at it first so we can have an idea of what we're working with, so we can gather some, if there's any additional questions, we can gather the answers before we get to the step of the meeting. If the company does not have a contract that they prefer to use, that's fine. We can use that independent contractor PSA that we mentioned before for independent contractors. There is some language in it that sort of is directed towards an individual. We can just edit that language. It's fine to use that as a stock contract for a company if that company says, oh, we've never had a contract before. So we're okay to use that as well. One thing for all RSO contracts that are on campus only, if the vendor is going to be setting foot, driving, or being present, physically present on our campus at any time, they are going to need to fill out an insurance indemnification form. It's effectively a third-party agreement that happens between the university and that vendor. So to kind of explain that, when the company is, and this goes for independent contractors or companies. So when a vendor is coming onto the campus, they're contracting directly with the student organization. The student organization and them are engaged in the contract. But if they're holding the event on campus and somebody's going to be on Miami's campus, as the venue, Miami University requires that the university is indemnified and that outside vendor carries a sufficient amount of insurance to cover an event in case of something happening. So they do require it even if they're coming to drop something off and driving on the campus. In case there's an accident, we want all of the students on campus, whether they're coming to the event or not, to be protected. So we do require some levels of insurance and that the university be indemnified by that third party. This also applies to fraternities and sororities that are hosting events on Miami's campus. If they are hosting events off of Miami's campus, if a student organization is hosting events off of Miami's campus and the vendor is not going to be on the campus, then this is an unnecessary step, not needed. Again, it's effectively a venue agreement. It states that the vendor has to maintain insurance and indemnify the university. There are 2 signature lines on it, so there's a good amount of legal language on it. We can send that to the vendor. The students should let us know. We'll probably give the students the document to send to the vendor. If the vendor has any questions, they are welcome to contact me. If there's something I can't answer, then I can direct them to the legal office and take care of things from there. We have not had any problems with it. They're generally very understanding that it's a required step. There are some cases that they've had some concerns with the level of insurance that's required by the university. There are some vendors out there that are available to do short-term insurance if they don't carry the appropriate level of insurance from Miami's perspective. I'm happy to help you all do the research, or the students do the research to find a short-term insurance provider, and if the vendor is concerned about it and it's going to cost them extra money out of pocket, the stance is that it is a cost of doing business, that they should be covering themselves and should be insured if they want to continue to do business. It's really a best practice. But in cases where they don't typically carry enough coverage, need to add additional coverage, if that's going to add a cost onto their end, they can add that into their total fee that they're charging the student organization. Should probably get that out of the way early on, so if they're requesting funding from student government, that they're tacking that into the total fee that's being required of that vendor. Affiliated organizations follow a slightly different procedure. They have to follow the standard contracting procedures for all departments. So if you are working at Miami and you've had to do a contract for your office, you likely have run into these procedures. If you have not, I'm going to lightly touch on it. For a company that you're contracting with, or that the affiliated student organization is contracting with, if your division has a designated signee from the legal office and the contract is under $5,000, that designated signee can review and sign that contract. My division is a division of student life. I know that we have a designated signee. I'm not sure if every division does have that. If the division does not have a signee, or for contracts that are over $5,000, you have to use the byway routing form. That is right here. It's on byway, so I just took a snapshot, but it's under contract routing and approval. There are instructions within that page. If you have not personally had to do it for your department, there's a high likelihood that somebody has, so they are able to help, and I'm available to help. So if you have any confusion about that, please reach out to our office, and I'm happy to help walk you through that. If you're dealing with an independent contractor, you have to follow the HR and academic personnel process for independent contractors. It's available at that website. Once again, then we're going to send this out so you can review that a little more in depth. I did want to touch on a couple of things, recommendations that I found have helped me when I've been doing contracting with an independent contractor for my office. Suggest that you collect a W-9, an OBRS form, and a PSA from them on the front end. Get as much information as you can from them, but again, make sure that you notify them that, hey, this is all required steps that we have to go through. It doesn't guarantee that the services are going to be approved. It is, however, required to even be considered. There's steps that we have to follow. I'm going to need these forms. It'll make life easier on you and the students as you move forward with this. This is one little snapshot from their page, the academic personnel and HR page. There are areas on here beyond where the screenshot was taken of areas where you can submit these, but to download them, their professional service agreement looks a little bit different. It's got a Miami header on it. It has some other language that pertains to doing business with the university, because effectively, as an affiliated organization, part of a department, they're doing business with the university and not directly with the student organization. Contracts for fraternities and sororities, they should be reviewed by our office. They must be reviewed by our office if the event or services are going to be rendered on Miami's campus. If they are off campus, they do not need to be reviewed, but we are here to help. So we are happy to look at it and provide support for the students if they need it. Let's dig into finances now. I know that was a long section that we did there, but we're going to dig now into the finances and monitoring the accounts for student organizations. So you all as advisors, one thing that I really ask, and I should have mentioned this at the start, really ask that you build those relationships, not just with your president of your organization, but with the treasurer. There are times that I've had a treasurer come and ask, well, why didn't my byway request get approved? And I said, well, it looks like it's waiting on your advisor to approve it. And they say, well, I don't know that person. And so that needs to be really the first step. If the treasurer doesn't know you, then ask that you please reach out, grab coffee, get to know them a little bit so that they know your face, they can trust you, and that they know that they can go to you for support because that relationship is going to be important. So we ask that you get to know, we appreciate all the support that you give to the student organizations. Make sure that the treasurers are included in that too. All student organizations, minus social fraternities and sororities, have 2 accounts on campus. They have an agency account, which is a 4-digit number starting with 9, and they have an ASG account. That is the same 4-digit number, but it starts with SD in front of it. All the money that ASG approves for the student organizations goes into that ASG account. Any money that the student organization self-raises goes into the agency account. It's important that you know the difference and the students know the difference. There are frequently times where in Byway a student will put in a request and they forget to put SD at the front when they're typing in their index code. It gets charged to their agency account. Maybe that's money that was earmarked for something else. Maybe they didn't have enough money in there and now it's driven that account to the negative. It's important for both the treasurer to know that and for the advisor, because when you get the Byway request, when you go in to approve it, you can double check and you can see, are they charging it to the agency account or are they charging it to the ASG account? And if it's being charged to one that you think probably shouldn't, so that's a good opportunity to reach out to the treasurer and say, hey, did you mean to actually apply this to your agency account, or did you mean to use ASG money for it? And it's an opportunity to stop that on the front end to make sure it gets charged to the right account. I do ask that you as advisors, I ask that the treasurers do it even more frequently, but you as advisors have access through the hub to the financial pages on the hub finance tab. And you're able to see all the transactions. It's like a long ledger of all the transactions that are taking place. As advisors of an organization, you have access to that. I ask that you periodically check it. If you notice things are maybe getting close to negative, it's an opportunity to talk to the treasurer to make sure they're aware, to make sure that they're not overspending, or to make sure that if something was applied to the wrong account, if we catch it before the end of the semester, that's really important. We need to catch it before the end of the semester. So one example would be that if I'm buying $200 worth of office supplies, and I have $0 in my agency account, and I've got $200 from ASG that's supposed to go towards that. I accidentally charged to my agency account, my advisor accidentally approves it, and we don't notice that it was charged to the wrong account. Well, if I'm periodically checking my accounts on the hub, I'll notice that all of a sudden I've got a negative balance in one of my accounts. If we catch that before the end of the semester, we can transfer it. We can just move the money. We have to send a request to general accounting, but we can move the money from one account to the other to get it into the appropriate area. If I don't notice, I forget to check, I check out, and I stop as the student treasurer, and I don't notice that my agency account has gone into the negative, and the semester ends, and ASG sweeps back my $200 that I didn't spend because it was spent out of the wrong account. That money's lost. So we're not going to be able to correct that if we wait too long. So there are notifications that go out to all treasurers and presidents and advisors at the end of the semester to make sure that you are aware of, or that a reminder to just go in there and check, make sure that the expenses are coming out of the right account so that we can take care of it before the semester ends, before we get ourselves into trouble.
If you see when you're checking the account something in parentheses, that indicates negative. So if the account has parentheses, that means it's a negative. We've had student orgs who will go, oh, we have $400, I'll go spend $300. Wow, how do we have $700 now? No, that's not how it works. So the parentheses do designate negative.
That's actually a real example that JS is giving, that has happened before. It's one reason that it's important that the treasurers, that you have confidence in them. They don't have to be an accountant to understand that, but understanding some of the basic principles, being somebody who has a good attention to detail, rather than somebody who says, hey, I want to be a leader, but I don't know a number from a letter, but I drew the short straw, so now I'm the treasurer. That is, it's important that we have confidence in our treasurers, and it's a very important position. And I say they don't have to be an accounting major or finance major or something like that. They definitely don't. Some of the best treasurers that I've had for student organizations that I've worked with have been just really, they've had really great attention to detail, and they paid attention during the online Canvas course training that they had to take, and they were some of the best that we've had, and they're in like the humanities. So they come from all areas. You don't need to be an accountant in order to understand it, but again, some of those basic principles which they get through our training, attention to detail, organization, probably the number one skill set that's needed for the treasurer position. This is just a reiteration. Again, we'll be sending this out, but dues, fundraisers, anything like that, that's where that goes into your agency account. They're not subject to ASG cutbacks, one thing I didn't mention, so those can be carried forward over the course of years. So if they raise money, they don't use any money out of their agency account, but they have $1,000 in there, it's not going to be swept at the end of the semester, they keep that, moves forward. In their ASG account, they are required by ASG to spend as ASG approves the funding. So when ASG, the way it works, in fact, they're due on Friday, 11:45. I've got a slide about that coming up. But their funding requests are due to ASG on Friday. They'll have a hearing on Monday, and after that, ASG determines what approved expenses are and what disapproved are. And anything that's approved needs to be spent generally how ASG approved it. So an example, the reason I didn't say specifically is if somebody says, I'm buying paper plates, forks, napkins, stuff like that for an event I'm having, and I'm going to go to Kroger and this is how much money it's going to cost. If they go to Walmart and get the same supplies, that's fine. Like it's not, they don't have to go, say they find it cheaper somewhere else, that's great. They're able to save money. They don't have to specifically go to that exact same vendor, but spending it in generally the same way that it was approved is what ASG is looking for. If at the end of the semester there's money left over, ASG will sweep that back unless a form is completed at the end of the semester with an explanation for why they need to carry that money forward. ASG asks that 75% of funds are spent every semester, and the reason for that is years ago, before they had that policy, there were organizations that would just apply for the maximum amount of funding and make up some expenses that they were going to have, and ASG didn't find anything wrong with it, would give them the funding that would tie up $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 in that organization's account, and then at the end of the semester they swept the whole thing back because they just didn't end up using it. They didn't have actual firm plans to use the funding. So ASG wants the student organizations to have firm plans to spend the funds before they request the funding, so that they're not tying up a bunch of money. What they ended up having to do is so many organizations started doing that as like just in case funds, that ASG had to cut back funding for all organizations because they ran out of money and they had to cut back everyone's spending. And then ultimately at the end of the year they collected a whole bunch of money back in the sweep because the organizations didn't spend that money. For that reason, they now require that 75% of funds are spent every semester. There are exceptions to that. They're understanding. They're people too. So if for some reason your organization is planning this major event, it's going to be great, it's going to be outside, it's going to be so much fun, it's April, it's Ohio, it rains. They get rained out and they don't end up spending all the funds. You just need to notify ASG, let them know, keep them up to date so that they are aware of it, and ASG will they'll show leniency on that 75%. If for some reason they're not able to spend that target amount of money that they had, if there's a real legitimate reason that they didn't spend it, just as long as they're notifying ASG on a regular basis, that their email address is asgfunding@miamioh.edu. As long as they're notifying them that they're going to be okay with it. How do you check your balance? You go to the hub, miamioh.edu/hub. You'll go to your organizations page and then you'll click the manage organization. You'll get you get to this page. So for this example, it's the SEAL ambassadors. They call this a sandwich menu or a burger menu. It's 3 little lines. It's just a drop-down menu. This actually does confuse some people sometimes. Is they'll get to this page and say, I don't have any options. I can't click anything down here. That's because they're all hidden up in that little drop-down menu. So not the most intuitive, but once you do it once or twice, it comes very quickly. But click that little menu, and it drops down all of your options. So you can see the roster. As advisor, you can see all this stuff. You see the roster, you see the about, you see all the events. What is frequently most used is roster and finance. Every student organization is different. They may use different parts of this more frequently than others, but all of them use the roster page and the finance page. So you click the finance tab, you get to a screen that we're working with the company that distributes, or that we purchased the hub from, to hopefully make this a little bit more intuitive. But you'll get to a screen that's pretty much blank and just says accounts. You click that accounts button, and that's how you're going to see the 2 account balances. So once you click that, they'll show up. Now let's get into various ways that the organizations can receive funding. Again, most of this is going to apply to affiliated organizations and general student organizations. Fraternities and sororities are not eligible because of their single gender policies and the way that is impacted by Title IX. They're not eligible for ASG funding. So for ASG funding, they have various types, they have various categories. Event funding, administrative funding, and capital funding. Capital items are things that they're going to carry forward, that the organization will carry over from year to year. Administrative funding is anything that's essential to the organization to function. So if that's pen and paper or whatever it may be, a printer that they require in their office, or it could be funding for required, if there's a national organization that requires them to attend a conference, that could be administrative funding, because in order to maintain their recognition, they need to go to that conference. Any administrative funding can cover that. Events are anything that's not required of them to maintain their position as an organization, but want to hold an event. Okay? Our student organizations love to host events, and that's great. We want them to continue to do that. They can apply for funding, for event funding. It's really the main category that we see most organizations utilizing the very most is funding for general events. So they can apply for that. They'll just need to break down their budget, their expenses, what they'd like to spend the money on. ASG is not able to fund food. That's one thing, unless it is educational in nature. So if there is a cultural organization that wants to give little sample sizes of food that is representative of their culture, and they'd like to provide an educational experience along with that food, that is okay, but they're not able to just buy like pizzas because it's a pizza party. Unity funding is one other area that they allow funding. It's actually a separate form. It also is due tomorrow at 11:45 p.m. or by 11:45 p.m. It's for a special type of funding. If multiple student organizations get together and they're like, hey, we want to pool our resources, we want to pool our minds, and we want to host this like great event that's going to bring our 3 like-minded organizations together. That's terrific. We want to encourage that. They're able to apply for additional funding outside of whatever their cap is for their organization. They're going to be able to get between $5,000 and $15,000 additional dollars that can go towards that Unity event. Applications are currently open. They're due Friday, tomorrow, at 11:45 p.m., not 11:46. I recommend that you maybe reach out to your organizations if you are advising an organization that is applying for funding this semester, that they not wait until the last minute. They can submit it today if they want. They don't have to wait until 11:45 to submit, or 11:44. In fact, I would highly recommend that they don't. The earlier that they submit it, the better. I mean, it should be complete, but maybe send them a little notification, a little recommendation that they get that submitted before that deadline, well in advance of it. The hearings will then be held on Monday, February 3rd. The hearings are to clarify, a lot of the hearings are really quick. You just go, they review, they say, okay, actually all this is approved, you're good to go. Or they might say, why do you think that it's going to cost you $7,000 for this DJ when most organizations spend $100 to $300 on it? Why is this expense so out of the ordinary? And it's an opportunity for the organization to explain what their logic is behind it. ASG will take that into account on how much they approve, and then come back to the student organization to let them know what they've been approved. The schedule will be released, so the students need to watch out for it. The schedule is going to be released on Sunday the 2nd. JS, help me out, where is the schedule being sent?
It'll be sent to the emails of all treasurers, presidents, and advisors.
Okay, so if your organization has applied for funding, that will be sent out to you, to your treasurer, to your president, to let them know when their approximate time is.
Important note with that, they can follow ASG funding on Twitter to see if they're ahead or behind schedule. So there's a chance they might be able to slide in a half hour early and get it over with.
And again, to that point, most of them move pretty quickly. There's the students, the majority of the students really are very diligent. They do their homework, they budget really well, and they are. ASG doesn't typically have a ton of questions for them. There are some that they may need to ask questions, they may get clarified, and then they go ahead and approve it. Most of those hearings move really quickly. Here's the schedule so that you all know it. Again, we will be sending this out. Is it available anywhere else? Does ASG have it on their website?
They should. This presentation's already been sent out to everyone RSVP'd.
Cool. And we should send it out to all advisors. So we will, here's the schedule. First one, obviously, I just mentioned. The next one after this will be the applications will go live that Monday before March 6th. They'll be able to, there will be an email that goes out to presidents, treasurers, advisors too, advisors as well, that will say, hey, applications are open, you can download the form here, they can fill it, spend the week filling that out. I recommend planning ahead so that they know what they're going to put into that application, and then they submit it. It has to be submitted by Friday, March 6th at 11:45 p.m. again. And then those hearings after that will be the following Monday. There's one additional one in April. It's a special hearing. It's for any funding that's needed over the summer or over the
Mega fair in first 50 days.
Yeah, first 50 days of the semester. If they're going to need funding for that, they can apply for it during that April funding session. Some examples of that mega fair, or like if they have a conference that they're required to go to in July, they can request funding for that there. Sweeps happen in early January. They're taking place right now, and then they also happen mid-summer, so there is time at the end of the semester. We emphasize that we'd like everyone to check by the end of exam week to make sure that we're processing any transfers that need to happen. The earlier the better, but we do, ASG does recognize that sometimes it takes a little while to process, so they are lenient with it. They wait until early January and midsummer to do the sweepbacks. I think they just emphasize in here, ASG created this portion of it, but you have to complete a sweep exemption. So what's a sweep exemption? Trying to think of a good example.
If you request funding for an event that's taking place at the start of the next semester, or you request funding for a room and it hasn't been charged out yet, or you have a pending PO that the company hasn't got back to you yet, those are examples of reasons ASG would grant a sweep exemption.
Just some general policies. They don't accept late applications, so that's why I emphasize that 11:45, not 11:46. They will not accept late applications, so if your students are planning on waiting until 11 to start filling it out and they missed it hitting submit by 11:45, I'm sorry. There's been a week for them to complete it, so they do need to make sure that, one thing that sometimes happens, again, when you're getting so many, this frequency starts to pop up a little bit. Sometimes when they use the form, they download it, maybe they complete it in Google Sheets, and then they re-download it as an Excel form because they do require that it's in Excel format. Then they download it to Excel, and then somebody else reviews it, and they open it in Apple's version of Excel, and then it gets corrupted. You need to double check to make sure that the file is good and it's in Excel and it's openable.
We heavily suggest that the treasurers have their laptop with them with the form so they can email it immediately if there's an issue. Otherwise, ASG won't be able to hear hearings. They also have to use the official form. They can't create their own form, which has happened. They'll be like, oh, well, we have more than we wanted to put on here, so here's just a list. And ASG needs everything put on the official form, even if you need to submit more than one form.
One example of that would be events. There are, I believe, there's 4 or 5 tabs for events. If an organization is holding more than that, they should just fill out a second form. Just complete a second form with additional, for the additional events. Red Brick Rewards. It is a tiered reward system. It was implemented in 2018, and it effectively rewards the organizations that are taking steps to maintain their status as good organizations. So a lot of our organizations are already doing the things to get into the upper tiers. It is a matter of having them report them. So it's attending SEAL workshops. It is creating a binder, whether that's electronic or physical, to pass down so that we're not starting over every year with a new executive board. So that when a student graduates, that knowledge isn't just lost as they graduate. They pass down the information to their successors. Various other things that are required, but they're really, really easy for them to accomplish and really do great things to help them maintain a good student organization. There are some funding tiers, so Tier 1 organizations are allowed up to $1,500, $3,000 for Tier 2, $6,000 for Tier 3, and $10,000 for Tier 4. And Tier 4 also gets a bonus $200 deposit for promotional banners or items. And if they were to ever have to do a cutback, they would lessen the cutback on Tier 4. Luckily, we haven't had to do that in some time, hoping that we don't have to do that again, but that is a precaution. So Tier 4 groups are a little more protected from that. More information is available at this website. Again, sending this out, miamioh.edu/redbrickrewards.
So one important thing for everyone to know, you can actually check the status of your organization's Red Brick Rewards. So an advisor has to be the primary holder of an organization's entity account, which is like SIL ambassadors at miamioh.edu. We register those in here, and here you will see the paths. You will have had to have changed the password for your organization. So you have that username and password. You can log into the hub with that username and password, and here you can check the progress. So if you scroll down when you're logged in, you'll see paths here, and Drew on the next page.
Yep.
Once you click on the proper path for that semester, it will pop up here and show you their progress. Here's where they are, and at the bottom, you can click Tier 1, Tier 2, and see which items they've completed and not completed. So this is your way to just go in and be like, hey, you said you were going to be Tier 4 this semester, you've submitted nothing. What's the status, what's going on? So this is the way you can check that also.
And Tier 1, just a little heads up on that, is like the easiest stuff. It's like, in order to actually function as an organization, they have to do it. So every year, we ask that we have student organizations re-register their organization. The leaders, when they log into the hub, they get a notification that says your organization is not re-registered. Click this button to re-register. So it makes it really easy for them. They just have to do that yearly registration, check their roster, and make sure that their finances are not in the negative, and they're in Tier 1. So
Tier 1 is actually the basic minimum you need to do to exist on campus. So everyone should be able to get to Tier 1 status.
New developments. So these are some things that are from mostly financially related, but just want to make sure that you're aware of. Some of them came in the fall. Bad news, so we formerly, some of the payment methods that are available for organizations are through Byway. They can do a purchase order, they can do a one-time use credit card, they can do a check request. POs were the preferred method for Kroger and Walmart in the past, and they are no longer available because Kroger sent a letter in August saying we're not going to accept your POs anymore in September. I see you might be getting ready to leave. Do you have any questions before you go? No?
Neither of this, I'm just absorbing.
Okay, if you have any follow-ups, please let us know. So, we've also recognized that Walmart has had issues accepting POs. There were times that a student would go in, they'd get the PO approved, they'd have everything ready to go, they'd walk into Walmart, and Walmart would say, sorry, we're not accepting them today. We understand how frustrating that is. And then the student would be out of pocket, they'd have to pay out of pocket, we'd have to process a reimbursement, which is a whole other headache and nightmare, and we want to avoid those as much as possible. So, the good news is that necessitated a change, and we now have physical credit cards that are available for the students, which are just so much easier. They're not like taking a piece of paper. It felt awkward when you'd get a PO, you'd walk into a company, you'd walk into Kroger and try to buy your stuff, hand them this piece of paper, and it felt fake, right? It's not like any other real life situation unless they're going into a business-to-business career. So we now have physical credit cards. Those are available to be held onto for Tier 3, Tier 4, and affiliated organizations. All other organizations can request them. They just don't have the convenience of being able to hold on to the card. They just have to go into accounts payable once it's been approved and pick up the card. And then they have to return the receipt when they return the card. The Tier 3, 4, and affiliated organizations are able to keep them. There are some forms that they have to fill out to say, and some instructions, so like if they lose the card, what's the proper procedure, what do they do, that they're responsible for the card while it's being checked out, and what they need to do when they have these cards, either one, they fill out a form on Byway. It can be used in any physical location. So I know it says Kroger and Walmart on there. That was actually our test, was just for Kroger and Walmart to facilitate being able to use it there. Last semester, we're now expanding it. They can be used anywhere. So almost anywhere, not online at Amazon.
Also, bulk stores like Sam's Club and...
That's it. No, you can't. Sorry.
Yeah, can't.
That's it. Thank you so much. They can't be used at stores that require a membership. So Costco and Sam's. It's that membership thing that's the issue, because the card won't line up with the student's name, even if the student's a member there. So unfortunately, as a university, we don't have an option for that. If it's a box store that does require BJ's, there's not one anywhere nearby, but they're one. Sam's or Costco, we unfortunately can't use them there. But pretty much anywhere else. They can also be used for an online purchase, for everywhere except for Amazon. Amazon, the preferred method is still with a purchase order. There are instructions for the treasurers on how to submit that in their treasurer training. If you have more questions about that, I'm happy to help you with it. But basically, they purchase through an entity account that they have with Amazon. They fill out a PO request on Byway. They get this PO number and they just put it into Amazon. Amazon asks for it, and they type that in rather than typing in the credit card number, and it gets accepted and approved and things shipped. It can be used at Dollar Tree, anywhere locally, except for, as we mentioned, the subscription stores. For our Tier 3 was just added to this. Tier 4 and affiliated were our test group. And so for anyone that has not received a card, they are being ordered for anyone that doesn't have one yet, and they'll be notified when they can pick it up from accounts payable. In the meantime, they're certainly able to reserve a temporary card just like any other organization. Some notes from accounts payable. Please request those cards at least 3 days in advance. Keep in mind that they're not open after 5 nor on the weekends. So if a student is planning to do a purchase on Sunday and they submit it on Friday at 5 p.m., they're they're probably not going to get it. They need to give 3 business days in advance. If they're planning to make a purchase, over the weekend, make sure that they request the card for pickup on Thursday or Friday, unless they're able to hold on to it. But they need to give a few days' notice. If they're making a series of purchases, there are spots within that form where they can fill out like all the different vendors that they're going to go to, and we ask that they try to group things together as much as possible. So if they know that they've got an event coming up next Saturday, it would be great for them to go ahead and start spending the money on Monday. They put every vendor that they need to go to on this form right now, get it approved, get it good to go, and then they can just start making the purchase all throughout the week from all those vendors. This is what the card looks like, or the form on Byway looks like. It's called a student org multi-use card. This is what the form looks like. I know it looks complicated, but this is just general information about who the student is and who the organization is, which campus, so whether it's Oxford or a regional campus, and then the total amount requested, and the dates of expected use. Then over here, these are not all required. They only fill out the ones that they need. So if they're only going to Kroger to buy some things, they just put under Merchant 1 Kroger in there, and they're all set. If they're going to multiple vendors, we ask that they list all those out. This card can also be used if they're traveling. So if they are going to a conference in Houston, they need a hotel. This card can be used as to pay for their hotel. They just need to give the necessary hotel information in the middle. For that same example, if they're going to Houston and they need to rent a car and they're going to need gas money while they're there, they can preload it with gas money for the span of that travel. Speaking of renting a car, there are some policies. It doesn't apply to many organizations. Not many people have tried to do this, but as a general policy, Enterprise as a company has said that anyone driving a vehicle that carries 10 or more passengers must be 21 or older. A minivan is like an 8-passenger van, so or 7 or 8, so that doesn't really apply to most normal vehicles. It would have to be a larger van. Anyone as part of a student organization, with that in mind, anyone as part of a student organization who's over 18 may rent a vehicle for organizational business. They don't have to pay a special underage driver or young driver fee that some rental companies will do. The university has an agreement with Enterprise that must be followed by Enterprise at the local office. So there's a local Enterprise on Route 27 on the way towards Indiana, and anyone as part of a student organization can request a vehicle. They can pay for a vehicle. ASG can fund the vehicle as long as it's a required event. So let's say, a required thing. So if they are, if they're going to a conference in Columbus, rather than using their own car, it's probably good to rent a vehicle. They can get funding for that from ASG. They can rent the car from Enterprise, get money loaded onto their card so that they have the gas money, and they can just take care of that. With those credit cards, I do want to go back real quick. That just reminded me of something. They need to keep all their receipts. Please, please, please advise them to take a picture of all their receipts on their phone. Always have the phone with them, and so anytime they get a receipt, they should take a picture as a backup because they're going to need to report those back to accounts payable at the end. For these, back to the Enterprise rental, they would fill out a form on Byway, and it just pays for it through that. If they want to rent, this is kind of a newer thing that's come up. If they want to rent a car somewhere else, again, my Houston example, they're going to fly there, the airport's in the middle of nowhere, they need to get to the conference center, and there's multiple of them, so they're going to rent a minivan to drive to the conference center. Our agreement with Enterprise only extends to the local office. There are other locations that might honor it. They can look it up with the code, but they also might not. So for that reason, we can only guarantee that they're able to rent without the young driver fee and as part of that organization from the local office. But they are able to pay for the young driver fee if they're going down to Houston. They just need to arrange a couple weeks in advance notice. Let's say, using that example again, I'm a student, I'm going with 6 other members of my organization, I'm flying to Houston, I need to rent a car down there. I need to give at least 2 weeks, probably more than that, but I'm going to need to find a rental company, whichever one I want to use, one that's going to rent to me as a 20-year-old, and reserve the vehicle, and then what I can do is submit on Byway and notify accounts payable that, hey, I'm going to need a credit card with I'm going to be the driver, this is how much I need, and I need the credit card to say my name because Hertz is requiring that I use, that the credit card matches the driver's license name. Accounts payable will order a credit card for them with their name on it for business for the student organization. They just have to give them enough notice. Travel agencies and trip planning companies, they have to be vetted by our purchasing office. They require certain levels of insurance to protect the students, so they need to be vetted by our purchasing office. So vendors, if your organization wants to use a travel agency or travel company and they can't find it in Byway, they should probably send an email to us, reach out, and we'll work with them to try to get that as an approved vendor. Fundraising, this one's really short. I know it looks like a whole other section, but I promise we're going to wrap up. I want to be respectful of your time. I'm sorry this is going long. University Advancement is here to help with that. They take care of all the tax information. So if somebody donates, Advancement's going to take care of the tax notification, the write-off information for that person. They'll also send a thank you letter to that person on behalf of the organization. They can help create fundraising pages for Move in Miami and continuing donation pages. What's the other name of those pages?
They changed it, I'm not sure.
Okay, so there are you can create an ongoing donation page that parents or friends or alumni can go on and can contribute to the organization to help support their needs. Advancement's able to help with that. They can also set up funds and scholarships. I just had an organization who was able to raise a good amount of money. They want to start a scholarship on behalf of their organization that they're going to give out. They're working on the criteria, but that's something that Advancement can help us with as well. Additional fundraising through dues, sales, etc. are encouraged. We can help you find ways to collect funds. We have credit card readers that are available for checkout. They can collect funds through Moolah. They can collect funds through cash, check, and get it all into their agency account. We're happy to help brainstorm ideas. There have been organizations that have done succulent sales on campus. There are some that have created their own thing and sold it on campus, a craft or something like that. So we can help them and connect them with resources to come up with fundraiser ideas.
One important thing here, never mind, I was going to say no Venmo.
Yep, so that's my next page. Unfortunately, that seems counterproductive, right? So I want to give you an explanation behind it. So I'm sorry, I'm not going to just gloss over this one. No PayPal, no Venmo, no third party, no Cash App, no third party digital collection. I know that seems backwards and old-fashioned, and so I want to give you the logic behind it. All student organization money is housed in one bank account with the bank. Every student organization, the reason that they have those index numbers are to designate their slice of the pie. But it's all held financially up at one bank under one account. So the university, understandably, is not prone to giving out that account number. And Venmo, PayPal, most of those can only be tied to one bank account at a time. So, each bank account can only be tied to one account at a time. So the logistics of trying to switch over that one bank account from student org to student org to student org as they're doing it is impossible. Also, with the frequency with which they might collect funds, with all the little microtransactions that are taking place and going into the account, it would be impossible to track and make sure the right funds are getting to the right account. So for that reason, we're not able to use those. I did want to give you the logic behind it because I know it can seem backwards. Most students are using those apps on like a daily basis. but it's not, we're not able to use it for student organizations. So once they make a deposit or they use the credit card reader to collect funds and funds are deposited that way, they fill out a quick summary of it on the credit card deposit report on FormStack, and that ensures that that money is getting to their index number, so their slice of the pie. I think that's it. I'm going to open it up for questions now. I know that was a lot, and I am sorry about the time on that. Again, we are sending this out so that you can look at it a little more in depth. I'm going to break it out and do basically longer sessions of them too that we can distribute. So, but I do want to answer any questions that you all may have. Yeah.
You mentioned the travel cards.
Yeah.
Is it possible to use, so if you're tier 4 and you just keep the card,
Sure.
do you use that card for travel expenses, or would you have to get one of the returnable ones?
No, you use the same card, unless you needed one of those ones with the student's name on it. So like for renting a car somewhere else, they'd want to get that card with their name on it. Also, if, let's say multiple are going, you've got a whole group of them that's going, have like 10 students, so you need multiple people to have a card for expenses while you're there. You can get temporary cards in addition to the one. That make sense?
Awesome, yeah, thank you.
So can you do the temporary cards and keep the main card back here, so in case the students need to use it for other expenses?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Or take it there and then get a temporary one for here, either one, whichever way you want to do it. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, sir.
Your example about pizza was very accurate from my point of view because I'm the faculty advisor of the Italian club.
Okay.
I know pizza is kind of Italian food. We had in the past, a pizza making competition.
Sure. So that would be.
Buying the ingredients would be something that could be done with the AG funds?
Yeah. So it would need to accompany something educational in nature. So like, and if you're doing like traditional Italian margherita pizza and you're doing it in the old-fashioned way, and it accompanies an educational session, and people aren't getting a meal out of it, they're getting a sample and an experience, then it would be okay. ASG would need to approve that. We work with ASG, but we don't direct them, so the decision would ultimately lie with them. But yes, as long as there's a logical, reasonable explanation. When I mentioned pizza party, it's a great example. I meant like, we're gonna order from Domino's and bring in like 20 pizzas to feed people while we're also doing this other thing. That's what they're not able to do. But if for some reason, so if that is applicable to you, and they're gonna cut it up into small sample sizes that go along with the education, then that would be appropriate.
The important part is the small sample sizes. If each person was making their own personal pan pizza, they wouldn't be able to fund it.
Okay.
But if it's the small sample size, they would.
Yeah. That makes sense?
Good.
All right, great. Any other questions? I know it's like wide-ranging and a ton of stuff, and it's not the most thrilling.
Yeah. Quick one, Drew. We use the Moolah reader and the credit card reader. And then, we keep track, the students who are doing it keep track of the monies going in so that we can compare to what is shown at the end of the day. Ultimately, does the money get transferred without cash going from hand to hand? Like, is it just changed from one fund to the next? Like,
So you mean for collecting?
yeah, like we're doing a fundraising
Okay.
event, and we're using both of those.
Okay.
The money would go into their, like 9343 account.
Yeah.
And then they would have access to then take it out to do whatever they want with it.
Through so there's no like ATM that they can pull it out of,
No,
but
no,
yeah,
of course, they have to
but
request it.
yeah,
Yeah.
correct, yeah.
But also how it gets there is different for each reader. The credit card reader, you have to follow the policy on the screen. The Moolah reader is transferred by our office.
Okay,
So the credit card reader, you have to take these steps to make sure the money gets in your account. Our office takes care of the steps for the Moolah reader.
So
thank you.
it has been a little while since I've used the credit card reader myself, but as I recall, there's instructions that are printed and right there in with it. But based on what I'm remembering, it's got a cell signal. It's like an AT&T cell signal. What they need to do is at the end, once they've done, they need to batch close everything. I don't know, it's credit card language. And so they batch close it and they print off the receipt that is a summary of all the money that they've collected. And then they need to go to that. It's actually, there's a short link for it that I should put in there before we send it out, is miamioh.edu/org deposit, O-R-G deposit. And they go right to that and fill that out with the information that's on that printed little summary of all the money they collected. But it's important also to remember, it may not match up exactly because there is a 2% credit card processing fee.
Okay.
Yes?
We've been having a lot of problems with things that have been spent internally showing up on the hub in a timely fashion.
Yeah.
Some things show up fantastic, and other things we wait and we wait. And as you approach the end of the semester, it complicates things even more.
Sure.
I know that you have no control over that, but are there some areas within the university that just are notoriously very, very slow for posting?
So I don't want to criticize anybody,
No, of course
but
not.
I would say some that have larger volume of transactions at a time might wait till the end of a month
Yeah.
to process it all. So if you do something on March 1, it may not be until the end of that month that it actually hits the account, or sometimes later. Depends on how backed up they get, particularly because the spring, March and April,
Yeah.
tend to be the most events on campus. So I would say I would keep an eye and keep in mind that there's a really high volume for PFD. Physical facilities can take a little bit of time to charge. Catering can take a little bit of time to hit the account. Generally, Armstrong's pretty quick on it, but there are some other, like, you need to pay a tech fee in another room, in another building. It might take a little bit longer for them. So just keep an eye on it. Maybe make a note, or have your treasurer make a note, so that when they haven't seen it by the end of the semester, that they can do a sweep exemption form to tell ASG that, hey, it just hasn't been processed yet. I know we continue to work with other areas around campus to ask that they make sure to prioritize that by the end of the semester, or around the end of the semester, to try to catch up. But we're also understanding that, like, it's also when they're the busiest. So we'll try to continue to work with them to see if we can get that sped up, those charges sped up. But something to keep in mind. Thank you for that.
But, so then it ties into 11:45 p.m. on Friday. So now new data is being turned in on something. Still have a sweep exemption from last semester, still waiting for a couple of things to come through.
Sure. So, yeah, I get that. Well, so if the sweep exemption was approved, then that money's going to carry forward. So it'll keep coming out of that. So it'll just add to the total sum. So
It's just frustrating. Never had
I
that
understand.
happen.
Yeah, I understand.
It's not going to hold back the request.
No.
No,
for the- okay.
correct. Yeah.
So you are gonna send us the slides, huh?
Yes, I'll add in that link too.
Already done.
You already did?
Yeah.
Cool.
And I sent an email to everyone who RSVP'd, but we're also going to send an email to all advisors with both the link to the YouTube video and to the slides.
Again, I don't have a time frame on it, but I do want to go back to, like, I'd love to have, to break out just the part about, like, registered student organizations and how to contract, and just do, so that you can just get directly to that rather than having to dig through. Or if you're a fraternity or sorority advisor, and that doesn't apply to you, so that you can just go directly to the things that apply to you. So right now we're going to send it out in its full length, but I am going to try to break it out into smaller sections that are a little easier to consume.
What we will do for now is in the description on the YouTube video, we will timestamp in the description, that'll probably take us about a week, but where you can go to different sections to just go read the description and click, I wanted to revisit this section, and then timestamp to there for now.
One other thing that I just thought of, we will need to get it approved by IT services and student services before we can send out the YouTube link to get the transcription in there for students that need that, or for individuals that need that. So accessibility considerations. But we'll definitely send out the slides right away.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.